CyberneticS Strikes Back. A Guide for Truth Legionaries. Welcome, cyberspace traveler. Thanks for entering willingly to the CyberneticS cave. Access granted. Be forewarned. You are turning your computer screen into a wall similar to the one in Plato's cave. You become a prisoner, at least temporarily, because you are free to return to the messy world anytime you wish. I have explained the importance of Plato's cave allegory elsewhere, in another YouTube video. On your wall or computer screen, you will be getting snapshots of other pertinent videos to what I am talking about at that moment. For instance, here is one about Plato's cave. All traditional sciences are typical Plato's caves with one wall to look at. You are the prisoner, and there is only one exit to the real world, where you do not see neatly ordered knowledge, but a great big mess. All these caves, as I said before, make their own assumptions. Succinctly expressed, the messy world and its wicked problems has been created by traditional sciences working as separate caves. Each has its own access to the messy world and they do not talk to each other. For instance, physics and chemistry assume that the scientific observer is removed from the experiment. It is like Galileo climbing to the Tower of Pisa, or Newton experimenting with forces and mass, and the colors of light. Cybernetics is suspicious and watchful for hidden assumptions. As I hope you will gradually come to agree, something makes this CyberneticS cave special. It has tunnels that connect to many different sciences. It is also connected to our knowledge of how government works, and believe it or not. It has a link to all religion, your connection to the creation of the universe, and the idea of God, whether you believe in God or not. Universo Kubernetes videos. In conclusion, the problems we have are due to the fact that sciences have been disconnected from each other. Now we know better. If this is what you came for, you are done. But if you want to go deeper into the CyberneticS cave, you are very welcome to do so. After you finish your expedition, I hope that you will agree with this conclusion, which I will be pushing hard, very straightforward and without apologies. It is time for CyberneticS to strike back. Hopefully you and I will multiply the viewers who will demand that CyberneticS is used to fix the mess the world is in. In this excursion, you find many arguments and references to many key videos that I have accumulated through the years. One of them, for instance, is how to become a cybernetician. You will become one, as long as you are willing to explore a little history, to make right a huge wrong. If you are not interested by now, you might as well stop watching. If you are at least curious to go on, I would bet you will become also an activist for liberty, justice, and transparency. Every time we identify some system, this CyberneticS cave being a special kind, we necessarily make choices and assumptions, whether we realize it or not. I am hereby assuming you are here because you think, as many others, that the world is in a big mess. So that, we shall call the problem. Then I will talk about the trap we are in, and why we can't fix the mess. Then we address the solution, which means breaking the trap, by reaching a shared understanding of the problem, whichever side you have taken, and the tools we will use working together. 1. Problem. The mess. Let's start with a short list of the huge problems, all related among them, that we call the world's big mess. If you disagree, you can make your own list and sort that out at the end. 1. The World Economic Forum spreads the culture of death. 2. The United States goes into a self-destructive mode. 3. Canada beats truckers. 4. European populations are fading, invaded by legions of people with incompatible memes. 5. Farmers revolt in Netherlands. 6. Australia enforces vaccines. 7. Latin American is painting itself socialist. 8. Africa's mineral resources are up for grabs. 9. Ukraine is pushed into a war with its neighbor, Russia. 10. India has an untouchable cultural deadweight. 11. China displays its new military might. This is a world in torment. So much to do, so little time to do it. Today, we are in the middle of a hot summer in 2022. We look around, and notice a wrecking ball crew government got itself fraudulently elected in the United States, and is on a mission of destroying the economy. It includes open border policies, high inflation and soaring prices of goods and gas. Democrats are trying to tear down the US Constitution, and corroding the national identity with its gender politics. The US Supreme Court is under attack. A virus that never should have existed, was totally mishandled. You might not agree with these two lists. That is the point. The world is divided, and so too, are the people of the United States. That is precisely the nature of the mess, because the mess flourishes among contending views. We need a new understanding to reach agreements, in order to start to dissolve the mess. An important part of the trap is that most people, those who have never visited this cave, think that cybernetics is an obsolete science, a remnant of World War II, which has something to do with computers or electronic brains of some sort. First of all, we have to be clear, cybernetics is not an ordinary science. Because of what I explained briefly a short time ago, cybernetics is the superscience of interconnectedness, meaning it has the power to explain the hidden connections and control mechanisms that are pertinent to other sciences. Well-intentioned people, however lacking this vision, are content with multiplying the confusion by spreading around traditional science. This is our meeting place, somewhere inside the Death Star, for lack of an invitation to the world-famous TED Talks at the Vancouver Convention Centre, British Columbia. As you know, TED Talks spread powerful ideas. The attendance to the actual talk is mostly white, according to the panning of the cameras. However, TED Talks get millions of views on their app and on YouTube. Every talk becomes a different Plato's cave for around 18 minutes in millions of computer screens all over the world. Maybe, just maybe, a sample of TED Talks about government helps us clarify why the world mess seems unsurmountable. It explains the nature of the trap. To say it simply, in spite of its apparent modernity, TED Talks do not have cybernetics on the index of subjects. This huge knowledge gap allows other TED Talk participants to captivate the public with absurdities and incredible insults, and go undetected. A case in point is Noah Yuval Harari, who dares insult the human race as a whole and get laughs. In reality, he is brandishing a series of fallacies, the product of his ignorance of cybernetics and, for instance, information theory. At the World Economic Forum, Harari is a premier promoter of the culture of death. Here he is seen with his spouse, being interviewed by none other than Anderson Cooper, of 60 Minutes. Something tells me that is not a healthy example for young children and teenagers. To continue explaining the nature of the trap, we need a bit of history of cybernetics. What is cybernetic really about? How and why did it get marginalized from the mainstream academic, governmental and business world? We won't get far at undoing the mess, until we allow cybernetics to strike back. These 6 TED Talks show that we are living in a Babel Tower that generates a dysfunctional governments all over the world. Speakers talk about how to fix government using the new tools we have. They are all over the place, they do not know what government is. At the top, Anna Piperl, what a digital government looks like. Then, Jennifer Parker, coding a better government, and to the right, Clay Shirky, how the internet will, one day, transform government. On the bottom, David Cameron, The Next Age of Government. Then Charity Wayua, A Few Ways to Fix a Government, and finally, Heather Brooke, My Battle to Expose Government Corruption. The first thing to notice is that none of them talk about the entity of which government is only a part of. They do not talk about the nation-state, nor its organization chart called the US Constitution. They do not mention British or Kenyan constitutional laws. However, in all cases, these countries appear to be huge, sick and divided organizations. You have to look at the whole patient, not just its government part, vaguely insinuated. The second thing to notice is that none of the TED Talk participants mention the word cybernetics. To me, this is strange because the word government came precisely from the Greek word Kubernetes, meaning the pilot of the ship. Since Aristotle and Plato, cybernetics has been about how to achieve your purpose. The word was transformed by them to include the art of governing the state. Government is not a thing, nor a building. It is a process. And the nation-state is this living process. Harari says that the nation-state is a fiction. Really? Try convincing someone who has been evicted, or been thrown in jail, and ask him how fictional his experience feels. Here is a list of 6 facts about cybernetics that TED Talk presenters appear now to be aware of. 1. Cybernetics was not born as a science. Look at Wiener's book title. It was a way of looking at systems found everywhere, such as animals and machines, and in nature in general, that had control by means of some sort of communication. There is no control without communication, so the two ideas are bound together. The point is that the founding fathers of cybernetics saw at once its application to many sciences. The connections I showed earlier were detected from the very beginning. 2. Cybernetics was born during the Macy Foundation meetings in New York, right after World War II ended, from 1946 to 1953. These are some of the many scientists that helped propel the new field of cybernetics the world over. These meetings have been labeled as the Big Bang of the Information Age. Mathematicians, philosophers, sociologists, psychologists and engineers made substantial conceptual contributions to cybernetics, starting at day one. Here are some of the names attached to each discipline. Over time, the meetings gathered more than 120 of the best scientists in their fields at the time. The launching of cybernetics was so successful that it became the mother science to many interdisciplinary sciences in existence today. Here are the contributing disciplines and the areas of interest, subject to lengthy discussions. After the meetings, those scientists began applying cybernetic thinking and identifying feedback control loops in the different systems each one was working with. 3. The remarkable and intriguing notion of cybernetics was information feedback. It was the key to understanding how a system is self-controlled, or self-guided to achieve some pre-established purpose. During the war, Wiener had been researching statistical techniques on how to improve the coordination between radar stations and guns aiming to shoot down enemy planes. Here is Professor Stafford Beer, demonstrating how the feedback function in a machine is built into it, so that control is an inherent feature. Machine automation, and then computers followed this principle.
The important thing to realize about systems is how they are controlled. And we must get rid of any notion straight away that control is something imposed on the system from outside. It has to be built into it. Now, you saw me operate this governor just now and noticed how the engine slowed down. Let's see how the mechanism works. Suppose the engine is racing, then the governor flies open like that. You see it lifting here, transmitting the message along here, lifting that cam up here, and then shutting off a valve there. That is built into the system. It's called feedback, and feedback is ubiquitous in control systems.
This table shows different logical levels of language, in accordance to the complexity each level implies. We start with the most simple language at the bottom. It is not by mere chance that these levels are related directly with the well-known academic levels. Children are taught to read words that describe objects, such as tables and chairs, houses, and apples. In the next level, they describe actions. Generalizations are next, and logically superior. Above them appear cause-effect laws. We arrive at statistical truths, and then go into the realm of cybernetics and complex systems. Transcendental systems are still higher, and more difficult to understand, especially if you are not in command of the lower levels. The only merit ascribed to superstition is that it fills in the gaps in knowledge generated by ignorance. All this is being ignored by ignoring cybernetics. No wonder we have such a mess. I will not go into more details. You may wish to pause the video to study this table. As you can see, here is another map of cybernetics, showing second-order cybernetics having to do with observing systems. It sets the stage for distinguishing between two very different scientific paradigms, the classical or experiment-based science, and the cybernetic paradigm. For this reason alone, cybernetics can be called the largest chunk of the apple of knowledge. And yet, as I said before, it does not appear at all in the topics contained in the TED Talks Index. This creates a big problem in terms of a cultural gap in understanding how a complex world works. We can appreciate the outstanding coverage of cybernetics in most everything we do in our everyday lives. We then need to recognize that today, most science is done by using computer models. Whether in social physics, or genetics, or biology, or astrobiology. Therefore, it is not classical science. The observer is defining the system, and builds a computer model based on that. If it works in real life, fine. If not, the model is adapted, until it mimics the real world in an acceptable fashion. Most of modern science is technically practiced under the logic of observer participation in the system being studied, or second-order cybernetics. How things went really wrong. Because of the development of atomic and hydrogen bombs, followed by a Cold War with the Soviet Union, government money never went to von Forster's research at the Biological Computer Lab. He researched on second-order cybernetics and theories of human cognition. Understanding and learning was left out to dry. His academic rivals were those involved in artificial intelligence. The likes of Marvin Minsky, they claimed that this was a separate science, independent of cybernetics, and in need of government money for research. AI. Researchers sold AI as a science with a strong strategic military application. Many of the other so-called complexity sciences followed the same path, marginalizing the mother science. They all made a run for their own economic benefit. Cybernetics, distracted by research that had no military application, was sidetracked into a vegetative state, almost oblivion. Almost 50 years ago, Stafford Beer expressed his argument for change, in his book Platform for Change. My friend and mentor, a premier cybernetician from Great Britain and operations research expert, and later founder of Management Cybernetics, was able to see the inherent instability of the existing institutions. His entire life work was a huge warning about dysfunctional governments, non-viable corporations, threats to the environment, huge public debt, corruption, electoral fraud, the misplaced role of banks, impending financial crisis, the lack of democracy, and most of all systems blindness. But people did not pay attention. He complained that he was frequently dismissed, as a prophet of doom. Governments and corporations were too busy exploiting the power of computers and artificial intelligence, and not interested in learning about cybernetics. He said it many times: universities, high schools and even elementary schools should be teaching cybernetics. He said it in writing and later on video, though we did not have the internet at the time. Perhaps the world and the planet would not be in such a mess. This video would not be published as a Hail Mary pass, a crash course. Management Cybernetics, founded by Stafford Beer, had come into being in the mid-60s and in the early 70s, with the books Decision and Control and The Brain of the Firm. However, no government on Earth showed any interest in putting Stafford's ideas to work for redesigning government. The only president that accepted to try management cybernetics was President Salvador Allende, of Chile. You can watch my video with the story and its explanation. The Chilean project was called CyberSyn, and a picture of the space-age looking operations room is well known to many cybernetics enthusiasts. Another rivalry, another blow to cybernetics. President Richard Nixon despised President Salvador Allende. This time management cybernetics and its viable system model and the universal laws of viability suffered the consequences. Quite a discovery, but penalized for its association with a socialist government. We all know how that rivalry ended. Allende committed suicide. The CyberSyn project was destroyed. This very recent graph helps confirm that things took a wrong turn for cybernetics. The chart begins with two pillars on the extreme left, cybernetics and systems thinking. They bred all the sciences and theories to the right, as was shown moments ago. Somehow, however, in this chart, cybernetics and systems thinking got transformed as part of the complexity sciences. Both Beer's management cybernetics, and Ashby's wider definition of cybernetics, get bypassed. This is what university professor tenures do, to keep up a tradition of higher and higher specialization. Those that really look at the big picture are ignored.
Sorry honey, we ran out of beer. That is what you get for getting involved with a socialist government. Even worse, you created your own management cybernetics language. What kind of a professor does that?
Here is an alternative rearrangement of the evolution of cybernetics-derived sciences. Complexity sciences are only one subgroup, not shown here, of many other applications of cybernetics. I have shown these other groups, just as important, in the video called Cybernetics, the Science of Interconnectedness. The conclusion is that there is virtually no science that does not benefit from contemplating the feedback loops involved in how things work in the real world. Here, we see the computer-related sciences, the self and collective governance sciences, biology, medicine and psychology, sociology, philosophy, and mathematics, all connected to Ashby's newer, but ignored, definition of cybernetics. Another blow was dealt to Ross Ashby's cybernetics and Stafford Beer's management cybernetics, when the Santa Fe Institute was created in 1984. It was created to study complex adaptive systems, in an effort to explain economic behavior, and the origins of the debt crisis in Latin America during the late 70s. Along the way, complexity was redefined, according to the views of Nobel Prize winner in physics, Murray Gell-Mann. It is hard to figure out what to do with a definition that says that effective complexity of an entity is the length of a highly compressed description of its irregularities. Years went by. Stafford never lost faith in getting these ideas tested in the real world. We tried to do something in Mexico. He did some work in Uruguay. also tried in Venezuela. And important work was done in Colombia by one of his students. But people say they have a hard time understanding the special language that describes the viable system and its laws. In the meantime, the world continued to get farther and farther out of control, and in spite of the internet, the iPhones, and the social networks, becoming a very messy place. The solution must answer candidly several crucial questions. Let's make that list. 1. What important aspects of cybernetics have been sidetracked because of culpable systems blindness and academic jealousy? 2. What is the cybernetic key to regaining control of governments and optimizing people's participation in government? 3. What is the thinking tool that is especially designed to restructure governments and large corporations, and make them smarter, and more efficient, and more environmental friendly? 4. How can we make much better use of the new governance potential of social networks, and stop using them to poison little children's minds? The answers are very straightforward. 1. Ross Ashby's approach to the definition of cybernetics, which in turn is based on information theory. 2. Ross Ashby's law of requisite variety, with a system's complexity defined as the number of states of a system. 3. Stafford Beer's massive use of first and second cybernetic ideas, including requisite variety and homeostatic balance, to discover the laws of viability, and create the viable system model. Not less important, its integrated planning system, performance indices and real-time control management. 4. Stafford Beer's collective intelligence protocol, known as team integrity. Other similar methods that displace the simple majority rule decision-making idiocy. 5. Why not, my universal 7 governance and management system that confirms the powerful thinking found in the Bible, the US Constitution, and natural law. Ashby's cybernetic approach is based on information theory. You start by asking the question, given all its potential behaviors, why is this system doing exactly this, and not something else? This same question applies to information theory and the amount of information contained in a message. By the way, the formula for entropy and information is the same, except information carries a negative sign. It is also called negentropy. Gregory Bateson, another of cybernetics' founding fathers, would later define information as the difference which makes a difference. Ross Ashby improved on Wiener's description of cybernetics. He starts by saying that the most important concept in cybernetics is that of difference. Cybernetics is about counting the states of a system, to figure out its complexity. Complex systems are defined precisely as those who are too difficult to specify, something that is still done by complicated systems such as Six Sigma, Balanced Scorecard, Total Quality Management, and other management fads. Knowing in principle the complexity of a system allows the observer to figure out the constraints that operate in the production of its behavior, or changing states. Once discovered, these constraints are conducive to the design of control systems. I use the game of golf to provide a fun example. Ashby's law of requisite variety. It is the basis for all homeostatic balances found in nature, those we need to stay alive, like constant body temperature, blood pressure, muscle tone, etc. Expressed in simple terms, it says that, in matters of control, only variety absorbs variety. This cybernetic law is just as important as Newton's gravity. It is so obvious, but people and especially governments are unaware of its existence even after great disasters occur due to systems blindness. A case in point, the financial crisis of 2008. It was totally preventable. The stuff of management. Complexity replaces the 4 M's. One of Stafford's favorite quotes was that complexity is the stuff of management. Whereas operations research during World War II concentrated in managing men, materials, machinery, and money, the surge of computers and the access to information processing changed the subject. Now it was more important to focus on complexity, or the control aspects of huge organizations, including the nation-state. After his death in 2002, Stafford's friends and students created a group to share new developments and published material. How to make things work better using the viable system model. Slowly but surely, it becomes more and more obvious that the language developed in management cybernetics makes the best description of what is really going on, and how to change things for the better. The evidence has been piling up, but a big pull is needed in high places. Today, with the help of management cybernetics, we can study how the nation-state is structured. We can examine law, economic decisions, and political decisions under the same framework. I suggest using the U7, or Universal 7 Governance and Management System, which I have evolved from Stafford Beer's viable system model, to make it easier to explain and understand. May I suggest watching my video on the cybernetic state, so you may see for yourself how the structure of the nation-state follows the laws of viability discovered by cybernetics. I may also suggest the video The US Constitution, a cybernetic masterpiece. One thing I must make clear is that Stafford's idea of socialism has nothing to do with the current expressions of socialist governments, such as those of Cuba, North Korea, Venezuela and others. Stafford was not socialist or capitalist, even less a Marxist. He was a Beerian. The viable system is built from the bottom up. Another of my videos goes into great lengths describing Stafford's vocation for personal freedoms. I have an assortment of other videos explaining the natural, cybernetic-based advantages that capitalism has over socialism. By socialism, I mean the case where the state owns and runs the economy. There is not a single case of any type of success, while one thing becomes certain in those regimes: the people lose their freedom. Stafford Beer also created Team Integrity. It is a protocol for creating collective intelligence, without the pitfalls of majority votes, and lobbyists squashing the minorities. It is a fair process, and very productive. Under this protocol designed by Stafford Beer, up to 30 to 40 participant decision makers integrate a structure where they are assigned 3 roles, to be played alternatively at different times: participant, critic and observer. The rotation of roles guarantees that the collective intelligence of the group gathers all the potential wisdom and experience of the individuals that it comprises. The product, plan, design, or final analysis is reached with every participant giving his or her support. Complexity is finally being cracked. I tell you, there is no excuse. Complexity is being cracked, because nature discovered how to create complexity without getting complicated itself. Some say the fractal approach to complexity is a proof of God's existence, an infinite intelligence, beyond human comprehension. In the end, Ross Ashby and Stafford Beer's approach to complexity, as the number of different states of a system, has proved to be the better, more practical solution. Also involved are Ashby's law of requisite variety, and the laws of viability. There are things and there are processes. We humans are processes, living vortices. A consultant to the Organization of Special Operation Forces in several countries around the world, Yanir Bar-Yam, has called these Special Operations Forces the global immune system. Surprise, surprise. Bar-Yam and others have adopted Ashby's law and Stafford's management cybernetics language to make them work optimally. Stafford never accepted offers to do military applications of his ideas. Paradoxically, that's where they have begun being applied in earnest. I am proud to end this short course, Cybernetics Strikes Back, by pointing out that in my video, Management Lessons of the Bible, you will find that the Universal Governance and Management System, or Universal 7 for short, based on Stafford Beer's viable system model, is quite powerful. It not only represents an individual person, but his nervous system, any corporation, the nation-state, as described by the U.S. Constitution, and finally, and amazingly, the body of Christ, as described in the letters of St. Paul to the Corinthians. The fractal model in the Bible is not a hierarchical structure at all. It is more like an organic structure. Where in the Bible do we find a description of the body of Christ? The Bible says that the body of Christ is made of 4 separate bodies: the individual, the family, the workplace, and the church. It is up to you, Truth Legionnaire, to find out what else this magnificent cybernetic cave has to offer. I finish with a quote from my video Universo Kubernetes, the universe of the person who accepts the responsibility of piloting spaceship Earth. Every individual and collective behavior is potentially transcendent. If God's creation is a work in progress, then the individual and collective intelligence of human beings carry the responsibility to ensure that the process is going in the right direction. The duties imposed by religions to serve God cannot be different from the ethical obligation towards other human beings, other species, and the planet as a whole, because this is the range of human action. Cybernetics strikes back.